Hey everyone, and welcome to Cooking Companion TV. I'm Jenna Edwards, and this is a recipe demo of homemade crackers. Yes, hearty little bites for spreads and snacks that you can customize to your liking. This recipe comes from Melissa Clark's cookbook titled Dinner. I'm showing an option with oat flour for a fun alternative to all-purpose flour. I threw some rolled oats in the food processor and ground them into this powder. Now we'll add spelt flour and salt and baking powder, and we'll stir together the dry ingredients. I think a fork is better than a whisk, especially with the oat flour, which can tend to be a little clumpy. Now add some water and a lot of olive oil, about 2/3 of a cup of olive oil, in fact, and mix it all together. It's a very wet dough and an oily dough, and we will knead it just a few times. And here I'm just going to use some folding action, and I'm doing this on parchment paper, but that's not necessary. I also made a batch using spelt flour and all-purpose flour per the original recipe. So here I'm kneading that dough, and you can see where it looks a little more like bread. The gluten proteins are activated, so it's more doughy and springier. And now we're going to cut this in half, and I recommend getting the dough into a rectangle shape for this part because we'll now roll it directly on a baking sheet, ideally a rimless baking sheet. Since my sheets have rims, I'm just going to flip it over and use the bottom side. And also, don't use an insulated cookie sheet. They can inhibit the crisping of your crackers. So I'm still using parchment paper here, and it is still completely optional for all of this. So you're going to roll out your dough until it covers the baking sheet. It'll be about 3/16 of an inch thick, or thinner if you happen to have larger baking sheets. And this may be just right for you, or it may be too thick. So I found it was too thick for me. So next time I'll divide my dough into thirds so I can roll out my dough to be thinner. That's because I don't have a larger baking sheet, so I'm just going to reduce the amount of dough that I put on the baking sheet. So just a side note, if you use spelt and all-purpose flour, it will spring back a touch while you're rolling it out. So my oat and spelt mixture wasn't quite like this. It pretty much stayed on the sheet when I rolled it out, but again, the spelt and all-purpose flour mixture is springier, so I'll roll it out and it springs back a little bit. So if you do that, you can expect that too. You didn't do anything wrong. And once you can roll no more, add your favorite herbs and seasonings. I'm playing with big flaky sea salt, which as it turns out is not a good idea because it's way too much salt, but it looks very pretty here. I also played with black sesame seeds and then some za'atar on another batch. And you can have a lot of fun with dried herbs or peppers or some other seeds. And then once you've got your toppings on, gently roll the rolling pin over your toppings so they get pressed into the dough. Now, as an extra step, I'm taking my pastry cutter and I'm scoring the dough where I'd like to break up the crackers into evenish pieces. I'm not fully cutting the dough, I'm just creating an indentation of where I'd like to guide the dough to crack. So they'll bake for 18 to 20 minutes at 425 degrees and pull them out of the oven when the edges are deep brown and the center is pale golden. They now need to cool on a cooling rack, which should take about another 20 minutes. And in this time, they will crisp up. If they don't, you can pop them back into the oven for a few minutes. Regardless, once they're cooled, you'll break them up and store them in an airtight container at room temperature for up to 2 weeks. Now, I know you'll have so much fun with this recipe and playing with your herb and seed variations. So get the recipe at cookingcompaniontv.com/crackers and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to this channel for more demos like this. I'm Jenna Edwards, and thanks for watching.